We're going to be talking about something slightly different than what we've been talking about in the past. Today we're going to move on and start talking about volume. Now, volume and surface area are slightly different. Surface area, as you might remember, we talked about in 10.1 through 10.3, is talking about the measure of the outside of an object. Okay, so we were trying to find out how many square units the outside was. With volume, it's a little bit different. It's measuring kind of like the inside, or how much space something takes up. So that's what volume is. Today we're going to talk about the volume of prisms. There's some important information that I want you guys to write down, so go ahead and pull out your red pen, and I want you filling this into your 10.4 notes. Something important that you always have to pay attention to when trying to find the volume of a prism is pay attention to what the base is. So you can see something's a little bit different here. Normally we would say base times height, or half times base times height. In this case, the B is capitalized. This means you're not just finding the base, but you are finding the entire area of the base, and that's why it's a capital. So when trying to find the base on something like this, you've got to see, is it a rectangle, is it a square, or is it a triangle? And then we're going to remember these formulas that we've memorized before. The area of a rectangle is A equals length times width. Area of a square, A equals S squared. And then the area of a triangle is A equals 1/2 times base times height. So whatever the area of the base is, you will end up putting this entire formula and plugging it there into what that capital B is, and then you'll be multiplying it times the height. Other important information that I want you to write down and keep in the back of your mind is, we learned this before, prisms are always going to have two bases. So a prism looks like the top and the bottom are going to look the same, kind of like a Pringles can or a can of soda or an Amazon box. The bottom and the top, the two bases look the same. One new idea that we're going to learn here is volume units are going to be cubed. So beforehand, we might have said like meters squared. Well, now we're going to say something like meters cubed if we are measuring the volume. So before we go into how to find the volume of the prism, there's a few things I want you to remember that we've talked about before. Back when we started chapter 10, we talked about surface area of prisms, and I explained to you how to tell what the length, the width, and the height was. The length, if you remember, is always going to be the thing that when you're looking straight on at the object, that's your length. So if you see right here, this is going to be my length because I'm looking straight at the 6 yards. Then the up and down one is always probably the easiest one. That's our height, so that's going to be the 15 yards. The last thing we've got is the width. The width is always going to be the side of your object. So this right here is going to be our width. The next thing you want to do before finding the volume of a prism is determine what the base is. Now the base is going to be, remember, there's a top and a bottom. There will always be two bases. As you can see on this one, the base is obviously a rectangle. So I want you right there in your notes to write this out. The base is a rectangle. This is the basic information we need to make sure we label and figure out before we ever start trying to put a formula to our problem. But now, as you can see up there, we talked about the volume equals base times height. Remember, volume equals capital B, the base of that entire area, times the height. All right, so as we already talked about, this capital B right here, that is going to be the area of a rectangle. So for that formula, we know the area of a rectangle is length times width. That is what this highlighted capital B is. That's the base of my object right there. Then I also still have to multiply times the height. So we are going to do length times width times height. Now you've got to make sure that you understand this down here is the bottom, that's my base. This is the other base because that's the top. So if you remember, this is going to also be a 6, and this side right here is going to be an 8. So let's go ahead and see the length that we've got there is going to be 6 times the width, which was 8, times the height, which was 15. Now it doesn't matter which order you multiply those in, you're just going to multiply them straight across. When you do that, you will see that you get 720 yards, and if you remember the notes that we wrote up there in red, the units are always going to be cubed. So the correct answer is 720 yards cubed. Sorry. All right, so this next problem, problem B, is a little bit tricky. People have a hard time sometimes deciding what the base of an object is because many people might say, oh, if I look at this, this is the base. Or this is the base. Or maybe this part down here is the base. Now, if you remember, there will always only be two bases, a top and a bottom. So really, if you're thinking about what we have two of, it would be the triangle. Here's like the front of the triangle, and then back here is the back of the triangle. So the base here is not a rectangle. The base is actually a triangle this time. That's going to be the hardest part on your homework assignment, is deciding what the base is. Now we're going to go ahead and use our same formula. V equals capital base times height. Once again, remember, this is saying take the base of that entire triangle, the area of the triangle. And we know the area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. All right, so once again, this is just that highlighted part there. And then you're still going to have to multiply it times the height of the entire prism. So I want you to picture this object right here as if it were like on its side. So picture the triangle at the bottom, and then there would also be a triangle at the top. So all of that being said, this is the base of our triangle. So we've got 1/2 times base, that base is 5.5, times the height. Now they tried to make it real obvious right here when they put this 2 and an arrow, and they're pointing to the height of that triangle. So they're trying to help us out, and in your homework it's going to try to help you out like that too, times 2. All of this is still just this base of the object right there. Now I have to take this, the height of the entire prism. Remember, we have moved this to where this is going to be the bottom, okay? So think about it. The triangle is laying flat on the ground. That means that this right here is going to be our height. So then we'll multiply that times 4. Remember, according to PEMDAS, you always want to multiply the things that are inside the parentheses first. So we're going to go ahead and multiply this together. 1/2 times 5.5 times 2. When you do that, you're going to get 5.5, and then you've still got to make sure you remember to multiply times the height of that entire prism, which is 4. When I put all of that together, you're going to see that we get 22 inches, and remember, we are finding the volume, so how much space that object takes up is going to be inches cubed. I know this kind of problem can be very, very tricky, so just try to be patient. Try to go back through, look at your notes as you do the homework today, and really just look carefully at what the width, the height, the length is, and check to see very carefully what the base is. Remember, there's always two bases, a top and a bottom. Now, I am splitting up this 10.4 lesson into 2 separate lessons, so this is going to be the last part that we do for today. This is a modeling real life. And you can see here I've got a box of Fruit Loops. It has a volume of 225 cubic inches. That means inches cubed. The length of the base is 9 inches, and the width of the base is 2.5 inches. What is the height of the box? And then it says to justify our answer. So the first thing we want to do is try to figure out, what do we know about this object? Well, we know it has told me that the total volume is 225 inches cubed. We also know that it says the base length is 9 inches. The next thing it tells us is the width of the base is 2.5 inches. So when I'm thinking about what I've still got to figure out, it tells me here it asks me, what is the height of the box? So that's my unknown. We do not know what the height is. Well, looking at this, it should hopefully be pretty obvious to be able to tell that our base is a rectangle. Remember, anything that I'm writing down, I would like you to also put into your notes. So if you've stopped, go ahead, pause the video, and write this information down on number 2. Now we're going to start with our original formula. Volume is always going to equal the area of the base, that's why we do that capital B, times the height of what the prism is. Well, we were given information a little bit different right now. We are trying to discover what that height is. We do not know what the height is yet, but we do know something unusual. We know the volume of the entire box. It told us that the volume of the box is 225 inches cubed. Now this base right here, we've got to figure out, if we know from this the base is a rectangle, then we're going to remember the area of a rectangle is length times the width, and then we'll be multiplying it times the height. So let's plug in the numbers that we know. Once again, the volume was 225. Now we're going to go ahead and plug in the length. As you come up here, it tells us the base length was 9. So we're going to plug in a 9 right there. If you look, once again, the width, we know it tells us up here the base width is 2.5. So we'll plug in multiply times 2.5. And the height, as you can see up here still, it is our unknown. We do not know the height, so we're just going to keep it multiplied times an h. So once again, you want to do any work that you have inside of your parentheses first. So we'll drop down 225 equals 9 times 2.5, which is 22.5, times the height. Your whole goal always is to get the variable by itself. So I want to get rid of that multiply by 22.5. In order to do that, we've just got to divide by 22.5 on both sides. Stick that into your calculator and see what you get. All right, I've kind of run out of room down there at the bottom, so I'm just going to do it over here on the side. You hopefully found out that your height is 10 inches. Now, it is not asking us for the volume of it, it's just asking us what is the height of this box. So we're trying to decide how tall that Fruit Loops box is right there, and you can discover that it is 10 inches. All right, that's it for our video today. You can continue going on to part 2 if you want, but if you're ready for a break, go ahead and take a break, but please make sure you watch part 2 before you do the 10.4 homework.